Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. This video we're going to take a look at the ocean board project, and if you have not seen the video on my wave research, I'll put a link up here for it for you. You may want to take a look at it, as it will perhaps give you some insight into some of the aspects of the waves that I have been trying to focus on. And I probably should just say straight up that I only have this board to this stage, and it has been a real nerve-wracking journey to get going on this stage of the boards, partly because once you put on these kinds of effects, you can't easily just strip down the board and start over again. And that's very different than a lot of other projects where I can scrape off sand or reprime, or, you know, there's a dozen ways to fix something when it starts to really go astray. And they don't really get a second shot at this kind of work. So I did quite a few practice runs with some of the materials and had some problems, went back, stared at the ocean pictures, found one I really liked. I might include it right here. That one. And I just stared at it for like a half an hour. Zoomed in. What's going on right there on that wave? Right there. Because what I was doing was wrong, and I couldn't quite tell why. And sometimes, you know, this is sort of a general tip. Sometimes you do something and you look at it and it looks wrong. But why? You know, sometimes it's kind of easy to tell. Oh, I need to make this more square, or I need to add a little more here. And sometimes you just stare at it and you go, I know that's not right, but I don't know why. So it's really been helpful for me for this project to actually do that upfront research and look at something so I could try to nail down what went wrong. And I'm not going to show you all the practice runs on it, but I will show you the key areas that I was not understanding that I tried to incorporate, and some of the pitfalls and successes that I had here. So with that intro, let's come over to the board and I'll show you what I've done. So I wanted to just give you first a little pull-away look at the boards, and the lighting looks weird in this because of this dark area. So, but really, this is the area of interest, shall we call it? So hopefully that'll look at least a little balanced. So, oh boy, where to begin? First, ignore this spot. I have to repaint this, and maybe we'll start at the back and we'll work our way front. So back here is the cast waves that I have been making. So this is a resin cast from an original mold that I made. It's cast in Envirotex, and I lay it over as a thin layer. Now that layer obviously can't carry all the way through here. So when I want to build the waves up to a higher level, because as the waves approach, they start to rise in their swell, and that means that I have to use an alternative material. Now I'm using a clear silicone, not silicone, a clear caulking. I'm using Liquid Nails Clear Sil, but I've also been playing with some DAP Crystal Clear. They both come crystal clear out of the tube, and I've been cutting them with mineral spirits. I am not going to go into a detailed explanation of how I've done most of this, because it's rather involved and I don't want to get into the minutia of it. But that's the basics of the foundation of the material. So first, with that being said, I'll point out the things that I like, and then you know me, I'm going to point out the things that I don't like, and some I can fix and some I won't be able to. So let's start with things I like. First, I like the texture that I got in this frothing foam. I'll do a little close-up in a second of that, but I still want to talk about it as a bigger picture. Really liked that. I wanted to capture more of a curve in the wave, and that seemed to come out pretty well, and controlling the color transition between the two was a semi-hit, semi-miss. I wanted to lengthen the wave from what I've done in the past to be more realistic, because the waves tend to be quite long. And Then I also wanted to more realistically model the sort of froth at the shore. Now, this is, again, sort of an in-between middle, I like it and I don't sort of feel. But we're going to call it a like for right now, and I'll talk about that more when we come up close. I felt pretty good about the transition of the colors. That's going to be constant coming up because actually taking a look at videos and photos, I realized that actually the color of the ocean does really come up quite high. Missing from this is going to be the final wet sand layer. I actually played around a little bit. You can see this discoloration here. I played around with a little mineral spirits to see if I could pull some of this up into this to give that wet look. You can kind of see it happening here. I don't like it. It's not controllable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a very thin layer of clear coat, which is like Envirotex, and that will give a very nice wet edge. I've done that a little bit in the past. I've been pouring up the layers and I like the effect. So that's what's going to happen there. The thing I feel like I have a better handle on, and I think at this distance, hopefully it's probably the best way to view it because, you know, it's a little more from a gaming perspective, is to get a sense of what the froth looks like on the ocean. Now, I don't think I have enough froth, and I may go back in and do a little more work on it, but I'm really leaning on not doing that. Except for a couple areas I can see, because this was a lot of time, actually. But before I get into that, we'll do the close-up. I'm a little rambly today. The pattern that the froth forms in the ocean is not a uniform. I used to stipple in, you know, some white water, and it doesn't look like that. Once the froth starts to break up, it actually forms, I don't want to call it a net or a mosaic pattern, but it's got like galaxies strung together. What do they call it when you have the the mega galactic structure, right, where all the galaxies are they're all in like threads. Astronomy, it's not really relevant here, but in any case, and so I like the overall feel of that compared to what I've been doing in the past, and it allows me to pull it out in a more controlled way and to feather it into certain areas, and so really like the overall pattern of it. And pulling up some of the seaweed, I'm doing that a little bit more than I've done in the past, and I'm going to pull up a little more of the seaweed on the shore, and I'll wet it with the clear, and then it will be beyond this frothy surf, if you will. So having said all of that, there are a few things that I would like to improve, and the first one is really a big picture item, and I'm hoping that this is going to show pretty well in the camera. We'll see. You can kind of see the contour of the land in any case. This contour carries out, so there's a little, you know, like a little hump here, right? So it's like deeper like that. When this wave comes across here, this wave shouldn't break like this. It should break here because this is where it's getting shallow the most. So it should have its major break here, barely be breaking over here, and maybe finishing its break here because it's so far up on the shore. So I missed that. I can fix that in the next board without, you know, breaking any continuity. It's a small detail, but it's an important one to me. So I have to pay attention to the underground topography, if you will, the underwater topography more. I can't concentrate on everything first round, though, because I got so much going on. My head was full, and it's not surprising to me that I might miss something small like that. The other thing that I would like to improve is to do a little bit better job with this tail end. This is not quite right. I got to go back to the photos and take a look and see what's going on. You know, over here, let me turn the camera here. I tried to set the depth of field pretty deep, so hopefully this is all in focus. You know, over here, right, you can see the froth line sort of carrying as this dissipates. And actually, taking a look, the water behind the froth should be, you know, flat with the top of the line. And there is a little dip back here. That's not quite right. I can fix that again on the future boards. I say this over and over. Here's a caveat. I can't do anything radically different on the next set of boards because they have to match this one. So, you know, there's small things I can change, but I'm kind of locked into a lot of the aesthetics at this point, barring more work on this board. So, little changes to the ends of the waves, though, that's doable. That's something I'm going to work on. Not to say that I hate this, but I just know it's not quite right, and I think I can improve it. The other thing that is a challenge, which is not fixable in any way, shape, or form, but it still always bothers me a little bit, is the bubbling that you'll get in the caulking to when I mix it. I've been tinting it a little bit, and then I have to mix in some mineral spirits to thin it so that I can sculpt with it without it drying out and skinning over very quickly, and I can control its viscosity that way. It introduces air bubbles, and there's no real way I know of to get rid of that. This cannot be vacuumed degassed. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. All right, I might do an experiment and see. I don't know, though. That's interesting, but it's so thick. All right, enough on that. I'll give it a try. I'll let you guys know how it comes out. So that is something that I can't quite fix, barring the degassing. And it's got a little shade of blue. And now I've pointed this out in the past that I've done, and that little shade of blue is just a little off from the rest of the effects. You can see here that I have tinted it, but it still retains a little bit of a different color. This tint is the same ratio as the clear coat that makes up the substrate of the water, but it's still, anyway, I don't know. The customer asked me if I was concerned about any of these things yellowing. There's going to be a top coat that's going to go over this at the end. I can't top coat it with the final layer until these set up. This is a very thick layer. It's finally starting to firm up a little bit, but you can still see it's got a little play. So this needs probably at least a week to fully cure into a layer deep enough that I'll feel comfortable top coating it. And the top coating will bring a uniform shine to all of the water areas, and will blend this all together. So that's coming, but won't happen probably for maybe even a video or two at this point. Now, the other thing that I need to work on is this break here and how that is making a union. I started to fix it here, and I didn't quite get it right. And at this point, it's probably best to come in a little closer on this so I can show you, sort of like this area in detail, and we can talk about it. So here's a close-up of the wave, and there are several aspects. Again, it's not just one thing. Waves are so complicated, they have so much going on in different areas that I really had to think about breaking it down into several substructures, if you will. And the first thing that was the hardest for me to get a grasp on, and I still had a little trouble with it on this one in particular, is that the wave comes up and then rolls over into a vertical fall. When it breaks onto the surface, it kicks foam up in front of it. Now, obviously, there's variations, I know that, but that's the general look that I was going for. And when it makes the break, it turns white during the fall because it's incorporating air and it's, sort of atomizing the water droplets. That's challenging because I need to put down the white layer first, let that firm up, and then sort of pull the green layer off of it to thin it. And there's some ways to fix it, but it's a challenge. And I need to keep this from slumping once I've got it into shape. So there's a real trick in the amount of softness in the caulking I can get where it's soft enough to pull, but firm enough to not slump. That's a trick, and I still will be working on that as I go forward. But when it breaks, however, I realized I needed to have more wave froth coming out. And let's see, I'm going to turn this just a little bit. Hopefully that perspective shows it a little bit better. So in some areas I worked on trying to really bring it up much higher than the baseline, and in some waves you can see it actually sort of flying even over the height of the parent wave. And that was a great realization for me because I feel like it's at least making the wave fall, the white water, so much more realistic in structure. that was a big discovery for me, and it was part of this little transition from here, from here to here to here. That was 20 minutes of staring at waves and thinking, what is going on there? What's going on right here? Anyway, that's how I've approached doing this structural assembly, if you will, of the waves. Now, coming back over to here, this area should be a little different, and I got to go back and do a little more looky-loo, but right, the wave actually is coming up. It should come up to a point, and then as it gets closer to this area where it's shallower, the wave should have that point start to fall, and it actually almost kind of rolls down the front of the wave, and I don't quite have that working here. Again, that's an area where I can improve that on the next board, and it's not going to contrast with this board too much. So that's a real target area. This one's not so bad. The other one doesn't have it enough in any way, shape, or form, so that's a real area I'm going to be working on for the next one. And that brings me to the third and final sort of big structure overview, kind of task, is getting this froth into the water in a way that is realistic. Now, I'm just going to push this back a little bit so we can see this. One of the things that happens is you get the whitewater churned under, so you get a slightly lighter sheen of water tint, I should say, underneath the behind the breaking areas, and over here, whoops, well, you know what, wait a minute. And that's what's going on in a spot like this, is that really there's air being entrapped as it rolls over. So you see this underneath this white area coming through the thinner water. And originally I thought you had to streak it back, and I've been taking a look at that. No. It's a fairly, it's not quite as distinct as this, but it's a fairly distinct edge. So that was a small learning, spot there. But for this froth area, what I did is I went in and I actually used a fine point paintbrush, say like a detail brush, and I painted in all of these lines. And I used an ink, and that was nice because it kind of beaded up. And at first I was just sort of like putting in dots and dashes in a pattern, though. If you can see, I'm trying to get this kind of a structure. And I realized the dots and dashes aren't working out right, and I need to actually kind of connect them. Then once I had done that, I realized, now this was actually fortuitous, that I needed to add more of the caulking behind the waves to bring that up. Like I said, this is still dipping down. It shouldn't be dipping. It should come right to flush like that. So I went in, filled it, and that actually was something I needed to do in the end, because it puts a little bit of a shadow underneath these little areas, that little light green tint. It's not super noticeable, but it's there in a lot of areas. And then I went back in and painted over those again. So that is how I did this, and yowzers, that took a while, especially for the entire board as a whole. So really, it should probably be a little denser in some areas. And that's one of the things I was talking about maybe changing, is going back in and thickening up some areas. I don't know. I'm going to think about it. And some of the other thoughts are how to handle some of these straggling areas. The one thing I don't have, you know what, I'm going to change the view and we'll wrap it up with this thought. So one of the things that I didn't really take into consideration, like I said, my mind was just full. Oh my gosh, this was really stressful, which is not to say I didn't enjoy the work. Please don't get me wrong. But it is to say that when I'm building this onto this area, there's no second guess. There's no fixing this. Once it goes down, it's down. So I really didn't have any open brain space. My RAM was full, and I couldn't think about these areas up in here and how to give them a sort of surge, if you will, where the water is piling up and flowing back, and there's some movement in there. That would affect some of this shoreline froth, and it's something that I'd like to see if I can think about for the next board. But again, I can't go crazy in changing it because this board needs to match all of them going forward. But I feel like I need to take into account some of the water that's moving forward and some of the water that's moving back. If I can get that going, I'd feel really strong about this transition area here. And the other thing, which I'm having a little trouble with, but I think I can fix, this is where I started adding the froth, and I lost sight of what I was doing, and this is not right. I gotta add a little more or something here. But one of the things that I'm trying to work on is bringing it, and if you see waves as they approach, and they approach sort of the frothy area that's on retreat, the wave actually picks that up and churns it back in. So I've been trying to incorporate it, rolling over the wave as it approaches, this sort of, here's this area where it's washing out, and trying to incorporate that concept over in here as well. A little bit of playing with it at this stage, but I think I can get a little better handle on it on the next board. So this, I think, boy, I don't know. I like it, but it's time consuming, and I wish it looked a little better for the amount of time I spent. But I'm going to put in that Envirotex layer, and that's going to give me my clear, wet sand, some thin water area here. And in order to make the transition, I might have to pull it back into this rougher area. And if I coat this, I might stipple the Envirotex maybe and see if I can get just a tiny bit of texture. It really shouldn't have much or any, but just a little touch. I don't know. It's something I might play with. Thoughts. And last but not least, something that is a bit of a struggle for me in general is a little bit of the wave spacing as they relate to each other. It would be better for me to have taken this wave all the way out, just like this, nice long wave, and then in the back have this wave not breaking and maybe just starting to break, in the middle as it approaches. It would give a little bit more of a realistic contrast, right? And it's not like every wave is coming up all at the same time. Here we all go. And it's not to say that this is way out of alignment, because you can have, of course, multiple waves breaking. And I was trying to think about water depth into where the waves would start breaking in relation to the actual land underneath. But I think I can do the next board with a slightly different, feel between the two. And I think that's going to add a lot as well. And as a final point, is that some people were asking me if you can see the seaweed that I put down under the water. Now, I'll see if this shows in the video, but it does show pretty well. And these areas that look matte at the moment go crystal clear when another coat is applied to them. So the areas where I have put in vegetation underneath, they're already showing, and I think they're going to give a nice effect once it's all cleared up. So anyway, that's a look at the boards and a fairly intensive explanation of where I've been worried, what I tried to do, areas that I think were a very big success. I really like the froth at the front of the waves. It took a lot of multiple materials mixed in, some multiple layers, stippling to get it looking dry. The froth does not look wet. It really looks dry when you look at it visually in real life. So getting that effect, lots of texture, lots of detail with some motion in it, I think that worked out really well. The slump, slight improvement coming down the road. The froth, area of question. and a little bit of the transition at the ends of the waves. Those are the key areas I'll be working on going forward. So that gives you a look at the ocean board as I have completed that one to this point. I will say it's taken me a lot longer than I expected to get this board to this stage, but that's partly because of a big learning curve there on getting the effects sort of the way I want them. I think the next board will go a little bit faster, but it is detailed work, at least as I'm pursuing it, and so it's surprised me, and I think I'm looking at if this camera's a little crooked, I think, isn't it? Well, you'll have to deal if it is. But it's a surprisingly large project in terms of the amount of work to be done on it than I really expected, which is always that way with me. I have no way of judging time. It's like I have a handicap. Anyway, thank you for joining me, though. Hopefully you'll come back and follow me along in this project, even though I'll be doing more boards that are basically in the same vein as this one. There will be some changes along the way where there's rocks and there's splashes, and so there's going to be new additions to this project visually as I go, so expect several more updates on it. And hopefully you'll stay tuned to the channel. I will be shooting the Q&A, which I said I was going to do last video. As soon as I hit render, I'm going to shoot it right away. So that will be, unless I'm deceiving myself again, which is a possibility, it should be the next video in the lineup. So, as always, I do appreciate you joining me. It means a lot. And if you have questions and comments, feel free to leave them down below. And hopefully you will come back soon, because you know I will be back with another TerranScapes video. I probably would like to change if I could go back, but I think it's a big... This is stupid. Stupid, stupid, stupid. This one in the queue. So hopefully you'll come back and join me then for that video, because you know I'll be back soon with another TerranScapes video, which is redundant.